a philosophical analysis of the concept of Aram in Titukkural that leads to freedom. அறத்தின் ஊங்கு ஆக்கம் இல்லை, அதனை மறுத்தலின் இல்லை கேடு. There is no greater source of good than the practice of Aram. There can be no greater source of evil than the forgetfulness of Aram. Titukkural is one of the 11 கீழ்க்கணக்கு நூல்கள் of the Sangal literature. The composition style is so unique and simple. It contains 1,330 poems in 133 chapters, each poem consisting of 7 words in 2 lines, 4 in the first and 3 in the second. The text is called Titukkural, for it is written in the Kural Bedba poetic style, mentioned in Tolkapiyam as Kural Bedba 2. The author too remains anonymous in the text. However, the name Tiruvalluvar is generally accepted as found in Tiruvalluvar, a text with 52 poems written in praise of Titukkural. Relevance of the study. The significance of the study is to recover the role of Aram advocated by Tiruvalluvar, who confronted people's worldview embedded in the context. Example of the experience of human misery and slavery, the religious trance of exclusiveness, caste hierarchy, and human estrangement from nature. That Aram ultimately is the path to freedom, the destiny of life, in which Aram outshines everything else. Research question: how do we establish that Aram in Titukkural is the foundation of life that leads to freedom, the true destiny of life? Research objectives. There are 4-fold aims to explicate the meaning of the concept of Aram in Titukkural, to discover the many dimensions of Aram in the first 38 chapters of Titukkural, to examine its relevance in confronting people's worldview and as a result liberating the world which has been divided by caste, class and creed, and to establish Aram as the core and freedom as the end. Research methodology. This study employs 2 methods for analysis and interpretation. The hermeneutical method, that is understanding as recreation or reproduction of the author's original intention in an objective manner, propounded by Schleiermacher and others. And deconstruction method, often construed as post-structuralism, propounded by Foucault, that is, stressing on the impossibility of the recreating the meaning of the text with the declaration of the death of the author on the autonomy of text with the possibility of multiple readings and diverse interpretations. Scope and limitation. For the sake of brevity and research precision, the area of focus is limited to Aram in Titukkural. The study examines the relevance of Aram in only 4 contexts to evince its deeper meaning as a path to freedom. Chapterization. There are altogether 7 chapters. The first chapter is the introduction, in which the thesis is outlined and interwoven with the literature review. Drawing on the insufficiencies identified in these reviews, a research gap is identified, which leads to research questions and objectives. The entire focus of the thesis is identified as establishing that Aram is the foundation of life that leads to freedom, the true destiny. The second chapter, the text and its context, presents an overview of the text, the availability of various commentaries on it, and its purpose of recovering the Aram-based life of the Tamil people. The third chapter, titled Titukkural as a Response, accounts for the socio-political and cultural background of Titukkural and offers insights into the context in which Titukkural emerged as a counter-culture in the then existing time. The influence of the various philosophies present at that time is also taken into account in the study. The fourth chapter, Concept of Aram in Titukkural, analyzes the concept of Aram and its dimensions in depth, starting with its etymology and ending with its ultimate purpose. The fifth chapter, Aram, A Way to Freedom, studies the four possible stages of the pathway, that is, awareness stage, contemplative stage, relational stage, and liberative stage, which leads to freedom realized in the making of Sandon, a noble person. Sixth chapter, Critical Appreciation, presents the radical realization of freedom through Aram. It also recognizes the potency of the ordinary, the common folk, in actualizing Aram. The final seventh chapter provides a summary, a few highlights, and a conclusion. The quintessence of the research in the thesis. Titukkural emerged as a response to the then existing dominant social institutions and philosophies. Three distinct strands of socio-economic outlook had dominated ancient Indian society, namely the theocentric Orthodox Vedic religion, the ethic-centered heterodox religions, and the materialistic philosophy of Charvaka. Titukkural can be seen as a response to the above systems and the influential philosophies of Tiruvallur's time. Generally, it was against all extreme strands. It outrightly rejected Varnashrama Dharma of Vedic religion and proclaimed equality of all by birth. பிறப்புக்கும் எல்லா உயிர்க்கும் சிறப்பொவ்வா செய்தொழில் வேற்றுமையார். Tiruvallur regarded married life in the way of Aram to be greater than ascetic life. He redefines asceticism as tolerating one's own pain and not causing pain to the other beings. He clarified that ascetic life was not reserved for any particular group but available for anyone who has the aptitude for that. Tavamum tavamulayarukku aagum. He suggested a radical alternative way to the ascetics, that they concentrate on avoiding evil acts rather than any external appearance. பழித்தலும் நீட்டலும் வேண்டாம் உலகம் பழித்தது ஒழித்து விடி. He appreciated material wealth, so that he said, "Save the பொருளை." Though he dedicated a chapter to acknowledge the power of fool, the law of nature propagated by Asivagam, like saying, "Fooling peruvali yavulla." He also proposed one's hard work to overcome fool. ஊழையும் உப்பக்கம் காண்பர் உலகின்றி தாழாது முயற்றுபவர். He countered the teaching against cultivation by calling the farmers the linchpin of the world. உழுவார் உலகத்தார்க்கு ஆணி. Though he advocated giving to the needy, மேலுலகம் இல்லனில் ஈதலே நன்று, he condemned begging, இரவில் இழி வந்தது இல், and deemed it to be a structural evil. He saw begging as a structural evil. பரந்து கெடுக உலகை இயற்றியார், he says. Concept of Aram in Titukkural. Aram emerges from the root word aru, which means sever, from which comes aruttal, which means severing. With the prefix varai, the word becomes varai aruttal and gives the meaning demarcating or defining or disciplining. It can also mean that Aram makes its way something like a river. However, Jainism replaced the word Aram with the Sanskrit word needy. Some also equate Aram with the Dharma of Sanskrit, of the Vedas, and Dhamma of Pali language of Buddhism. Titukkural defines Aram not merely the well-being of oneself, but the intent and the feeling of common good. Aram is a simple, meaningful, and worthy word for all words, deeds, plans, systems for the good, common good. Aram is a way of life that pervades every aspect of human values and living. The chapter on Aram in Titukkural is technically the central chapter of the whole text. For the text's primordial task is to communicate Aram. There are about 14 positive dimensions of Aram found in the text: love, hospitality, courteousness or speaking pleasing words, gratitude, rectitude, humility, discipline, social sensitivity, charity, compassion, tabam, non-stealing, and truth. Thus, Aram is not a single virtue, but rather encompasses all virtues that indwell every human person, nurturing them to become better humans and to move towards an egalitarian society. Aram is a way to freedom. Tiruvallur does indicate the motive for the Aram-based life as freedom, though it can be an elusive term for many learned scholars of the text. Aram as a pathway contains 4 stages: awareness, nurturing process, practicing, and experiencing liberation. Awareness stage. There are 3 levels of awareness on their way to freedom from their life of bondage, namely self-awareness, social awareness, freedom awareness. Self-awareness. According to religion, the world is responsible for human suffering and delusion. Though the soul is eternally free, unattached, immutable, and indestructible, a living being is bound by his or her own actions. Tiruvallur offers 2 perceptions of bondage: internal, that is selfish attitude, and external, that is all that of one's situatedness or givenness. Tiruvallur urges one to become aware of the elements of internal bondage: anger, covetousness, slander, speaking futile words, committing evil acts, inconsistent conduct, killing and inflicting harm. Social awareness. It is to do with the evils existing in society, like caste impoverishment and unjust judgment. Freedom awareness. Tiruvallur identifies the problem of the worldview reason for people's enslaved mentality. For example, the caste system is the result of the doxa. For example, Varnashrama Dharma. We hold doxa. The doxa is a set of beliefs and values that are acceptable as true and unquestionable within a particular society. Thiruvalluvar assures that freedom comes through education. மேற்பிறந்தாராயினும் கல்லாதார் கீழ்பிறந்தார் SS. Contemplative or nurturing stage. One contemplates what one has become aware of or what one has been brought to one's awareness. This contemplative stage has 6 levels of progress. Knowledge of bondage of freedom, knowledge of an egalitarian society, knowledge of responsibility towards the other, knowledge of the benefits of reaching out, knowledge of enlightenment, knowledge of transcendence, relational stage. The primary way in which Aram can be perceived is the way in which a person relates with others in his surroundings, especially to the disadvantaged and vulnerable people of his society, that is, poor, socially marginalized, women, etc. Thiruvalluvar shows his concern for the poor when he dedicates many couplets caring for their needs, especially in the following chapters. Chapter 22 on compassion, 23 on charity, 105 on poverty, 128 on mendicancy, and 107 on the dread of mendicancy. Quran 972 demolishes the idea of hierarchical division of society based on birth and socially edgy people to the periphery. பிறப்போக்கும் எல்லா உயிர்க்கும் சிறப்போவா செய்தொழில் வேற்றுமையா. Thiruvalluvar criticizes the established norms of treating women in the society and elevates the role and virtues of women for holistic social growth. Thiruvalluvar's perspective on women was much more progressive and integral, attributing to them individuality and personhood as dignified and knowledgeable. He uses very refined terms to indicate married women in his couplets like Manayal, Illal, and Valkai Thunai, which meant one who conducts or rules the family, and life partner. Life partner is the phrase which is first time introduced by Thiruvalluvar in the classical literature. He reveals his admiration for women when he explains what is there more precious than woman. பெண்ணில் பெருந்தக்க யாவுள்ள. Liberated stage. The concept of liberation of a self-realized person in Titukkural is a reality of this world and not of another world or realm of life. Liberation in Titukkural is a holistic perception of life in this world and getting freed from the attitude of attachment and living a life of fruitfulness and magnanimity in this world itself. Thiruvalluvar also presents liberated person as Nita, the detached, Santo, the noble, and Valaritam, the possessor of pure knowledge, and Ainkavintan, the conqueror of his 5 senses. There are different levels of freedom. One may realize freedom from self-interest, freedom in the life of the liberated persons, freedom from erroneous doxa, and freedom from irreverence to life. Following these levels of freedom leads to the evolution of the Santo, a noble person. The achieved freedom in the life your knowledge, practicing simplicity in the present, stepping into transcendence or inner freedom, 4. Moving towards fullness and sharing of joy and valuing others. Critical appreciation. This detailed philosophical study on Aram and its implications for human freedom has revealed the dire need for Aram in today's context, especially in a world filled with strife and conflict, yet not completely devoid of goodness. Radicality and the potency of the ordinary are two insightful tools adopted to critically evaluate unethical context through the lens of Aram. Radicality is defined as going to the root of issues for fundamental transformative change, questioning norms to reach essential truths, and seeking deep structural shifts. As a radical text, Titukkural confronts different ethical frameworks that deny human dignity and offers progressive alternatives such as radical harmony and inclusivity, radical humanness and reverence, radical compassion, radical presence and awareness, radical ethics, radical secularization of the sacred, and radical generosity and sharing. Radical harmony and inclusivity. Tiruvalluvar envisions a harmonious living that transcends the bounds of human realms and strikes a chord of unity and inclusivity with all of creation in this world. Tiruvalluvar explains this radical inclusivity emphatically in the phrase "Rabbukkum ella uyirkum," actually meaning equality of birth for all life forms. This is further emphasized in Quran 397, which states an ideal man or woman of learning transcends their own territories and makes the whole world their own by learning other languages, other cultures, and so on. That is, Yadan, Nadamal, Uramal, Ethoruvan, Sattunayim Kalladamal. Radical humanness and reverence. The ideal person in the philosophical vision of Tiruvalluvar is possessed of a deep-rooted identification with one's humanness, where he or she can do good even to those who harm him or her. Inna செய்தார்க்கும் இனியவே செய்யாக்கால் என்ன பயத்ததோ சால்வு. Quran 987. Radical compassion. It has the mark of emphatic oneness with the one who is suffering or in pain. It is not responding to evil with evil, but showing compassion to one's own enemy even on the battlefield when he is defeated. Tiruvalluvar approves even lying in the place of truth if it can do good. Radical presence and awareness. Tiruvalluvar takes this world seriously and does not propagate a world of bliss in another realm, but in this world, here and now. For example, he appreciates the relationship of a man and woman, that his being with his wife is greater than the bliss one can imagine in that other world. He seeks an awareness of a blemishless mind, and this is possible if one removes all impurities of hurting or harming the other, and if one is filled with the love and kindness. Tiruvalluvar asks each one to be true to one's own inner conscience. Kannencharivad poyyirka, he says. Radical ethics. Thiruvalluvar went beyond ordinary, prescriptive or normative ethics. He exposed the depth of true ethics, an ethics that aims at freedom. It is a combination of the highest human aspiration of self-transcendence with the highest divine aspiration in humans, namely the love for the other, in the most expansive way possible. It is the boundaryless ethics, wherein the other is the parameter of one's own integrity and freedom. Radical secularization of the sacred. Thiruvalluvar radically secularizes self-realization for the populace. He expounds a way of attaining perfection, being here in the society, living by the way of Aram, and evolving as a Sandon. Arathatin ilvaalkai aatin purathaathin poi peruvadu evan, he says, which was reserved only for a selected few. And he shows the way to the ordinary to become divine by living a profound life here. வையத்துள் வாழ்வான் வாழ்வன் வானுரையும் தெய்வத்துள் வைக்கப்படும், he says. Radical generosity and sharing. Generosity and sharing are more estimable in the eyes of people. Thiruvalluvar emphasizes the virtue of generosity even if there is no possibility of heaven. Being the utmost radical thinker, Thiruvalluvar goes to the extent of saying that one's inability to share with the needy is worse than death. Further, the assertion on sharing with all beings in the world removes the gap between the rational beings and the rest of the world. பகுத்துண்டு பல்லுயிர் ஓம்புதல் தூதோ தொகுத்தவற்றுளெல்லாம் தலை. Second one, the potency of the ordinary. It is the power to actualize. Every ordinary person, especially the married ones, has greater potency to lead an Aram-based way of life, which is the highest form of virtuous life. Thiruvalluvar has a deep appreciation for married life over ascetic life, though both are discussed in the first part, Aram. Thiruvalluvar explicitly underscores the married life compared to the ascetic life in many Purans. These aspects of potency of the ordinary are examined here. The role of family, the role of the individual, the role of love. The role of family for Thiruvalluvar, married life and asceticism are not two isolated realities but two sides of the same coin. While criticizing an isolated asceticism that seeks self-liberation, Thiruvalluvar affirms the role of people who choose asceticism after living a satisfying married life by actively participating Aram in committing to public service. This leads us to two observations. First, it is possible for the ordinary to be virtuous, and second, the care of the other is possible only in the ordinary family life. The role of the individual. Every family is the house of Aram, and every member of the house is co-responsible for the growth of the other in the family and the society at large. The role of love. Aram enhances love, and such love is the perfect way to dispense Aram, one's duty in domestic life. A family that is filled with love and virtue will be filled with character and happiness. This love can be extended even to non-human beings, and Thiruvalluvar as a protagonist exemplifies love as a prerogative for living life with Aram, and as a person with no love, equivalent to a dead person, he says. Conclusion. The radical text is better understood as a response to the socio-spiritual, political, economic, ideological context of Thiruvalluvar's time. defying and condemning inequality, and it presented an alternative, noble way of life in a society composed of loving humans known as Santo, Nita, etc. Thiruvallur uses Aram and Sandanmai, two important philosophical concepts throughout the text to envisage this new vision. The text uses a secular language with down-to-earth, easy to understand imagery. It blends three approaches to its audience: didactic, dialectic, and mnemonic. This last element, mnemonic, is a unique and focused articulation of human reality. It appeals to the universal humanity with a universal ethical foundation. The author does not seek a certain individuality or individual identity, but rather conveys the message of the shared existence. The text can be adaptable to any cultural setting, as it seeks to be rational, free of individual religious affiliations, piety, and loyalty to political settings. A human is divine when he or she rises above petty boundaries, thereby achieving freedom. By and large, I would like to assert that Titukkural stands as a testimony as one of the greatest world literatures ever written, encompassing within itself the finest virtues that unify humanity and lead to the heights of human freedom and truth. One of the core dimensions enumerated in it is the notion of Aram. Aram is an innate human nature present in everyone. It is the aspiration of a holistic, integrated life that remains deeply hidden within. It is the core of the authentic human living and a pathway to freedom, the ultimate human destiny. The sacred has been secularized, and the secular has been made sacred in Aram. Enlightenment needs Aram, and one without it is bound within. Many in this world merely exist without ever unfolding or realizing their true worth and purpose. If only Aram can be touched upon and lived through, the joy and bliss of life would never leave anyone. And I strongly believe and wish that the world could be transformed into a better place if the dream of an egalitarian society is to be realized. Aram needs to be highlighted in academia, social life, and individual ethos. Thank you.